According to the Constitution of the United States, the Bill of Rights, which was ratified on December 15th, 1791, the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, quote, a well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, close quote. I'm Tyrone Bowman. This is Tyrone Bowman Tonight. The topic of discussion, part 2, Black gun ownership. I began talking about an article that I read recently, and I'm going to continue and pick up where I left off at, explaining the importance of this particular story. Quote, 2 weeks after the January 6th, 2021 riot on the Capitol in Washington, Destiny Hawkins, a divorced mother of one who lives near Atlanta, waited in line to purchase her first gun, a Glock 43. Quote, it wasn't the gun I wanted because their selection was so low. People were buying guns like crazy, close quote, she said. Quote, but seeing those people climb the walls and attack the Capitol on top of all the other shootings of black people just confirmed why I stood in the cold and got my firearm. The bottom line is that we have to protect ourselves and our homes, but we purchase guns differently, close quote. Hawkins said, stressing the sense that more black people are buying guns for the sake of protection against racial attacks. Quote, I drove a long way to take safety classes, close quote. She added, quote, I went to the range, close quote. This increased interest in firearms delights Philip Smith, who started the National African American Gun Association in 2015. A human resources executive in Atlanta, Smith said. He owns, quote, about 30 weapons, including the lethal AR-15 style rifles used in the Buffalo mass shooting and the Uvalde Elementary School massacre in Texas on May 24. The increased number of black gun ownership represents, quote, an awakening, close quote, Smith said, quote. It's a value added to their family households, as opposed to, let's say, 10 years ago or 6 years ago. This is a movement in a certain direction, and I think it's a good direction, close quote. His organization has 48,000 members worldwide, nationwide, he said, and has gained more than 1,000 or more each month since 2020. It has nearly 107,000 followers on Facebook. Smith said the murder of Floyd, compounded by the myriad shootings of black men and women by white police officers, vigilantes, and the like, sparked the surge. Quote, there has been a polarization racially and politically that's driving that narrative for black people. Purchasing guns for protection, close quote, Smith said, quote, folks are saying they don't want to be out in public without a gun, or they might end up like Ahmaud Arbery or Trayvon Martin or countless others who have been killed in the streets. Z. Parson developed an affinity for guns when she was growing up in rural Petersburg, Virginia. Her father, grandfather, and uncles all carried guns and taught her how to use one. The owner of 3 firearms, Parson started a Facebook group called Black Women with Guns as a way of subtly encouraging her peers to embrace arming themselves. Quote, it's a safe space for black women to come to be educated about gun usage, gun safety, and protecting yourselves, close quote, Parson said. Quote, it's a Sisters in Arms space. We're taking a step to make sure our families are safe. A lot of people of color don't necessarily want firearms in their possession or anywhere near their children or their family because of fear of something could happen. A lot of that is about not knowing about gun safety. But the numbers are going up because one thing, black people, black women included, want to protect themselves, close quote. Smith of the Gun Association said the pandemic and the racial justice movement created an atmosphere that pushed black people to legally arm themselves, and it is not slowing down. Quote, during the heart of COVID, I heard from so many people asking me to suggest guns for them to buy, close quote. He said they were scared about, quote, the social breakdown, mob violence, shortage of food, gas price risings, lines were long. Then there's the social unrest that was going on, and those forces made our community collectively say, you know what, I'm going to get a gun, and I think all that is a good thing, close quote. When Smith moved to Atlanta from California in the early 2000s, he noticed that his dentist, lawyer, and accountant all possessed guns. For 13 years, he refused to engage them about firearms. Then one Friday after work, he gave in and went to the gun range with two coworkers, quote, just to shut them up, close quote, he said. But I had one of the greatest times in my life. I stayed there about 3 hours. After a second fun experience, Smith decided to start his organization. If I could have fun as an African-American male with no training, no connection to guns at the gun range, I figured other black people like me across the country would enjoy being introduced to guns. On a napkin, he wrote down what his gun organization would be, with the emphasis on gun safety, self-defense, and the history of black gun ownership, all expressed on its website, which also features the Black Panthers, the Tuskegee Airmen, Harriet Tubman, and more. We share about all these black heroes, and we let the visitor know that they had a gun and their liberation or death mentality, Smith said. That history is something you can be proud of, and nobody can shame you for that reality. Hawkins from Atlanta said the shame would be in the guns getting into the wrong hands or being used for purposes other than to protect. Quote, everyone shouldn't have a gun, she said. I'm okay with figuring out legislation to make sure people who pose an oblivious threat aren't able to get a license. Just because you meet the requirement of age and basic background check doesn't mean you should be able to possess a firearm, close quote. Smith does not agree. His organization has 120 chapters across the country, and it has trained more than 7,000 black women in the last year on how to safely use a gun. Having a gun is okay as long as it's done in the right way, he said. We try to use a lot of images and imagery that really connects our people to good experiences and positive images for families, for husbands, for mothers, for kids. It's something we should embrace and use that positive energy in a legal, law-abiding way, close quote. I'm Tyrone Bowman. Never surrender, never quit.